Cloudcast Media.
Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. You can be listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show. We got the nation's longest running community podcast, now in our 20th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, 6 decades of doing great things for folks in San Diego County, whether it's food insecurity, financial literacy, the homeless, and everything in between. They do a great job. It is always a pleasure when we have a return appearance from one of our cool guests who have been on in the past, and that is Dr. Niki Elliot. She is the director of the Center for Embodied Equity and Neurodiversity, better known as CEEN, from the University of San Diego School of Leadership and Education Sciences, better known as SOLS. Always a pleasure to see you, Niki. How are you?
I'm doing well today, Drew. Thank you so much for having me back.
Well, honored to have you back, and so forth. And you brought a colleague with you as well, and that is Reverend Sarah Sumner-Eisenbraun, the co-pastor of St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. How you doing, Reverend?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. How long have you been involved with the church? That church, I should say.
Oh, I've been at St. Andrew's for almost 9 years, but I've been ordained in the ELCA, the Lutheran Church, for almost 19.
Okay, very, very good. How long have you known Niki?
I met Dr. Niki maybe just over a year ago. It's kind of an amazing story that's, for me, gotten me to this place to be in this conversation today.
Well, tell a little bit of that story, can you?
Oh, I would love to. I'm actually the creative director for an event that does continuing education for people who work with children and youth in faith-based settings. And so I'm always looking for people who can bring important resources to this community of adults who are both professionals and volunteers in those arenas. And so someone had sent me a KPBS story about Dr. Niki and her work with neuro-inclusive classrooms, and that just got me really excited. And so I reached out, and the conversation started from there, and it led to me wanting to be more involved in the work that she's doing and getting to be a part of her Heart-Centered Connections training as well.
No, I think that's great. We're going to talk about your upcoming book in a few seconds, Niki's that is, but talk about the mission of, is it pronounced CEEN or just CEEN? What's the best way of saying it?
Thank you, Drew. We pronounce it CEEN.
Thank you very much, just like it sounds.
Absolutely,
okay.
CEEN with a C, but we want to make sure that students with diverse needs are seen,
right,
and that their needs are met, not just in classroom spaces, but in community as well.
Right. Unless you are in a different orbit, neuroscience and neurodiversity has just exploded on the, in the public face, so to speak, as it should in this area. What got you into that field?
I have been a career educator, so I started off 30 plus years ago as a 4th grade teacher. And so from the very beginning of my professional journey, I have always been assigned to and had great success with children that are exceptionally brilliant, capable, but their needs are misinterpreted through a behavioral lens, which involves a lot of discipline, expulsionary discipline, suspensions, a rerouting away from college prep and other tracks of opportunity. So from there, building my commitment, we didn't have the term neurodiversity 34 years ago, but then parenting neurodiverse children, so raising one child with a diagnosis of ADHD and then adopting my son who had a dual diagnosis really helped me see from a lived experience as a parent how much misunderstanding and marginalization goes on for children who have different diagnoses.
So how are we doing on that? Are we informing enough people, whether it's parents or whether it's teachers or whether it's administrators or whoever in the world, that this is how things are being misdiagnosed? Are we making some progress?
So our work is not on the diagnosis end because, again, I'm not in the medical field, but within education, there's still not enough knowledge of how to support the increasing number of children who are being diagnosed, again, not just within the special ed program, which in the past, that was the thought. If you have a diagnosis or an exceptional need, you are referred to special day classes or special programs that allow a significant amount of isolation and marginalization from the greater community. So what's still lacking tremendously are spaces where general education teachers, as well as what we refer to as expanded learning or community educators and caregivers, can understand these diagnoses and understand the ways in which we as a society need to transform our environments and improve them in order for them to be inclusive. So that's not just classrooms, but before and after school programs, summer camps, as well as faith-based organizations like Pastor Sarah's.
Yeah, right. My daughter is a fourth grade teacher, by the way, in the Poway Unified School District in this area. Talk about, and then we want to tee it over to Sarah in a few seconds here, but talk about your upcoming book and what's the name of it and what inspired you.
Oh, thank you. So my upcoming book will be released July 21st. The title is Heart-Centered Connections, 7 Essential Skills for Helping Neurodiverse and Marginalized Children Thrive. This book is so important to me. It's really the culmination of my life work. And my goal, again, if it's not been your lived experience as a family, as is ours, to have a child who grew up, he's 19 now, will be 20 this summer, was never able to be on a sports team, never able to attend Boy Scouts, summer camps, Sunday schools, because everyone said, sorry, we weren't trained to quote unquote deal with behaviors or needs like this. And so my mission in Heart-Centered Connection is to eliminate that statement from the mouth of anyone who touches the life of a child, because we all need support to understand how we change the environments, the ways we deliver instruction, the way we address sensory sensitivities, differences in social needs, nonverbal cues, and things like that. So many times I've heard grandparents say, oh, Niki, that book is so important. I have a grandchild with autism. I'm going to buy that book for my daughter. I say, no, you need 2 copies of the book. You need 1 copy for your daughter and 1 copy for you, because as a grandparent, it's not okay to say, sorry, Jerome can't spend the weekend with me because I don't know how to deal with his behaviors, right? So again, those levels of marginalization cut the opportunity to build those deep relationships, right? There's something unique and beautiful about a grandparent relationship. And so we want to also equip grandparents, aunts, uncles, everyone, foster parents who touch the life of a child.
Well, anybody who touches the life of that, employees, employers, colleagues, anybody in between on this. Reverend Sarah, how does this tie into what you're doing on the faith-based side?
Well, it speaks to me on 2 levels. It also speaks to me as a parent. I parent a child who has been through the IEP process, who we learned has a different sensory experience of the world than maybe I do. And so it began as an interest there for me because I wanted to be as informed as I possibly could about the way that my child experiences the world. So it starts there from my personal experience as a parent. Where it extends into my work is that the majority of my career, I've worked with children and youth. And of course, if you have any, involvement with groups of children and youth, you know that there are students who experience things in a way where it's really common for someone to lean into that, what Dr. Niki talked about, that, oh, well, we aren't quote unquote equipped to deal with this. And for me, it just is so incredibly important that our faith communities recognize this larger issue of the absolute necessity of neuro-inclusivity in our environments for children and youth and also for their families. And so for me, learning from Dr. Niki, being a part of the training as I anticipate the release of her book, it's been incredibly transformative in my own leadership, in myself as a parent, but just me as a human being, who lives in community.
So how has it worked for you as a parent? And I asked the same question of Niki, being the parent of a child that sort of fits into this little area, so to speak. How has it changed how you've parented, or has it changed?
Oh, it absolutely has. I mean, part of the reason why I was on the lookout for resources and people who are doing this work is because of my lived experience as a parent, where it's the same types of things that Dr. Niki was talking about. It was difficult for my son to be on a Little League team. It was difficult for my son to be able to participate in after-school programs. There were times when people said incredibly insensitive, uninformed things to me about my child. And I realized that I needed to get all of the, information that I could about how we honor who my child is, and that he is not marginalized or excluded because of something that he cannot control. And so it's then, of course, when you realize I need this as a parent, you realize there are so many parents and families and kids who need this kind of support, information, training, I suppose, but it's really deeper than that. It's about the connection, and it's about the way that we interact with kids and see them, the whole picture of who they are, and not just this kind of deficit-based approach that we're used to.
Yeah, Niki, you want to add to that?
One thing that what makes Heart-Centered Connections different from other kind of parenting guides or educator guides is the grounding of this work in our understanding of the nervous system. And we rooted in applied educational neuroscience. So as a mother in the younger years of parenting, before this work was fully formed for me, this has been a long journey, I didn't understand that nervous system sensitivities are a part of many neurodiverse diagnoses, be it autism, ADHD, trauma diagnoses, and things like that, and fetal alcohol syndrome, which doesn't typically fall under the neurodiversity banner, but it still has some of the similar features of other types of neurodiversity. And my son, that is a part of his diagnostic profile. So understanding extreme auditory sensitivities, why we would see such strong behaviors when we're out in public, or why he would become so dysregulated hearing a baby cry, like things you would think wouldn't bother the average person. There were assumptions made, especially when race is compounded with disability. People aren't always teasing out when they see a Black or brown child, or male in particular, exhibiting strong behaviors as a result of sensory sensitivities versus if he was white, right? So all of that, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done a lot more to support that autonomic nervous system, struggles that he was having. And now I'm able to inform people in a different way, and how to make modifications to the environment. He's much more, he's grown significantly in his ability to manage those sensory stressors, to communicate his needs around that, but to be able to help parents from the youngest ages learn how to navigate that proactively would be a game changer. And we love to see the results of this work being able to show parents what I didn't know back then. Yeah,
we'll come back from break. We're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Niki Elliot, Director of the Center for Embodied Equity and Neurodiversity, better known as CEEN, from the University of San Diego School of Leadership and Education Sciences, joined by her colleague, Reverend Sarah Sumner-Eisenbraun, co-pastor of St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. We're going to talk more about Niki's upcoming book, Health-Centered Connections, 7 Essential Skills for Helping Neurodiverse and Marginalized Children Thrive. I want to talk about Peace for Kids and that work as well. And then from both of you, some of the challenges moving forward. But the key is just really informing those folks and give them the tools. We all know that's important, whether it's in the world of neurodiversity or whatever the case may be in this area. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest running community podcast in our 20th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. We'll be right back after this short break.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification. is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to an edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Always good to have back in the studio with us today is Dr. Niki Elliot, Director of the Center for Embodied Equity and Neurodiversity, better known as CEEN at the University of San Diego School of Leadership and Education Sciences, and her colleague, Reverend Sarah Sumner-Eisenbraun, co-pastor of St. Andrew's Lutheran Church, talking about Niki's upcoming book, Health-Centered Connections, 7 Essential Skills for Helping Neurodiverse and Marginalized Children Thrive, and talking about both of them being parents of children that fall under this, what they've learned, what they're continuing to learn. And we all know this as parents, you never stop learning in that aspect of it. But Niki, maybe you can talk a little bit about Peace for Kids and how that ties into your health, heart-centered connections.
Thank you. So I always am careful to credit the Peace for Kids community for helping me finalize the title, Heart-Centered Connections. So Peace for Kids is an organization in South Los Angeles, which is where I grew up. And Mr. Zaid Gale is the founder and executive director of Peace for Kids, and it functions as community, extended community and family for children in the foster care system, particularly as they emancipate into adulthood. So they were one of the first organizations that I tested the model and organized the 7 pillars of heart-centered connections with. If you want to make this one note, we understand that trauma, experiences of trauma, can alter brain and nervous system function in ways that can produce symptoms of learning disabilities such as ADHD. So it's really important that we look again at the overlap and intersection of how we're impacted by things we may experience in the environment. And again, very careful to say that doesn't suggest that every exposure to foster care is automatically being embodied as a trauma.
Right.
But what happens is for many children that are moved from home to home, you've got foster parents who are opening their home with good intention, but they're not aware of many of the needs when they're bringing sometimes neurodiverse children into their home. So they're seeing strong behaviors and they say, well, I can't deal with this. And the children are being put out and rehomed. So when we have, as part of our work with Peace for Kids, we've trained about 30 now members and volunteers of the Peace for Kids organization, and they continue the Heart-Centered Connections training within the community. So they have documented a 50% reduction in failed and aborted foster home placements when the foster parents learn these 7 essential skills, because now they have the awareness of how to more accurately distinguish intentional behavior from the symptoms of a diagnosis, and they're learning the things that they need to proactively do differently or set up differently in their home to take the nervous system's needs into account, and they provide a different level of care for the children.
Right, and so, pivoting over to you, Reverend Sarah, in this area, what thing have you learned the most about these 7 essential skills that really jumps out at you that you didn't know before? Is there one, or it's all 7 collectively?
Well, I mean, yes, all 7 collectively, of course. But
Yep.
I think the most important thing that we return to is oftentimes when we're in a situation where we have a child with specific needs, the burden is put upon that child to be the one to change and adapt. What we talked about in this information with Dr. Niki and her approach and the whole approach is that we as adults need to learn to be self-aware. We need to learn to pay attention to our own nervous system responses to things. We need to be in a place where we're attending to that part of ourselves so that we can fully show up in a way where we're not asking these children to be the ones to bear the burden burden of the adjustment. And so it's not just about the environment, although that piece is very important. It's also about the way that we show up in interactions with these kids and how important that is for us to be able to fully be present and supportive in a way where we are co-regulating with the students or the children that we're interacting with.
You know, when I hear the story, and I love the stuff, finally I get to use something for my master's program, right? And I always get excited about, oh my God, I can do this, which focused on communication. And I think there's some parallels on this. And what you learn very much so is that, no, it's not the receiver that needs to change. It needs you as the communicator that needs to understand how the receiver receives information, right, from a communication standpoint. And if I learned anything from all that aspect is, okay, well, this person really is an analytical person, so I need to sit there and address the person from that aspect of it. And here you are, you're right. It's not the kid, it's us that needs to be aware of those things. You know, so Niki, with the book that's going to be coming out when?
July 21st.
July 21st.
It's available on pre-order now.
Very good. Amazon?
Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to buy a copy for your whole team, you can buy a bulk discount on porchlight.com.
That's right. Very good. Heart-centered connection, 7 essential skills for helping neurodiverse and marginalized children thrive in this. And I think you talked about the group, Peace for Kids, and they've certainly have seen such a 50% reduction in, those foster care placements. And I think it's spot on. We have a lot of folks on our show that are tied into this space, whether it's just in time for foster youth, our good friend Don Wells, or Promises, and the folks you folks work with on this. But starting with the schools and the teachers in this aspect. Do you work with districts on this? Talk about that.
Yes. So we work with individual schools and entire districts. So, for example, here in San Diego County, we have a district-wide partnership with San Marcos Unified School District.
Andy Johnson.
Yes, Andy Johnson. Dr. Tiffany Campbell provide excellent leadership for our initiative there, where we have had done this work previewed with all of the principals and site leaders and district staff district-wide, and then from there they nominated representatives from each of their school sites to complete the level 1 training. So that was over 65 people. And so now next month we're starting what we refer to as level 2, which is facilitator training. So in order for them to spread the work district-wide, they're sending forward trainers who will do the next level of work with me to learn how to deliver this curriculum to fidelity so that it can spread across all the school sites in the district.
Yeah, did you work with La Mesa Spring Valley too? David
Yes.
Feliciano?
Yes.
Or am I making that up?
No, you're not. So I was going to get to that next. So, and then David Feliciano and Deanne Ragsdale also providing excellent leadership for La Mesa Spring Valley. Their approach was different. So whereas San Marcos did a district-wide initiative, La Mesa isolated it and concentrated it, not isolated, they concentrated it at one school site, STEAM Academy.
Right.
And so last year we did a year-long professional development of the Heart-Centered Connection certificate with that one school. And I would say year over year, the district tracked reductions in office referrals for discipline, and they charted a 38% reduction in teachers' office referrals. So this year, again, after we trained 2 facilitators from La Mesa as facilitators, they then led the training this year with another SVA academy, another middle school. So now 2 middle schools within La Mesa have received the full training.
No, that's fantastic. So if people say, listen, I need to get the book, all right, you can pre-order it now. It again, the Heart-Centered Connection, 7 essential skills for helping neurodiverse and marginalized children thrive. If they want to get a hold of you and just chat with you, how do they get a hold of you, Niki?
Thank you. So we receive emails at CEEN, CEEN, at sandiego.edu. And if you look online for University of San Diego CEEN Heart-Centered Connection Certificate, we have information there for all of the dates that we'll be running open cohorts for in 2026.
And that's good. And Reverend Sarah, how do we get a hold of you? People are just fascinated about what you're doing in this project.
Yeah, so I'm a pastor in San Diego, right on the edge of La Mesa. So it was actually Dr. Niki's work in La Mesa that got my attention.
Right.
But it's really easy to find me at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church, www.standrewslutheran.church. And so that's probably the easiest way to track me down. And I just want to share, too, from my experience, part of the reason I decided to go on and take this level 2 facilitator training is because I agree with Dr. Niki's vision about extending this work beyond the classroom into all of the places where children need to be. And so for me to take this information to faith communities and to see our faith communities as places where we have thought about this, we've done the work, we are committed to this kind of inclusion for all children. It helps us to live out who we claim to be. And so it's something I'm just so honored to be a part of, extending this conversation out into the communities in these kinds of ways. And not just my congregation, but hopefully more broadly as well. It's something I am really excited to be a part of.
Well, listen, when you give the tools in some areas where the tools need to be, okay, and just raise the awareness, that's whether it's neurodiversity or neurodiverse, whatever the case may be, obviously a good thing. Niki, as always, the content you share is just always top shelf and spot on, wishing you nothing but great success. Well, this won't be the last time you'll be on the show, probably to your detriment in that aspect of it, and talking about those things. And Reverend Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your info on this. Is such a critical area. It's continuing to grow, I think, in a public body of work, as you well know. That's the world you're in on this aspect. Yes. Can't talk about it enough. I'm going to mention this to my daughter, a fourth grade teacher in the Powell Unified School District, and works with Ben Churchill, who's now over there. And can't thank you both enough for coming, and thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. Listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, nation's longest running community podcast. Now in our 20th year, brought to you by the fine folks of the Mission-Fed Credit Union. 60 years of doing great things in the community. And to our audience, we hope you enjoyed the interview.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission-Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.